There's an interesting problem that has become one of the most charged constitutional standoffs in recent legal memory. An obscure piece of sentencing guidance proposed by the Sentencing Council, which threatens to redefine equality before the law. And for once, people have noticed. So, in January, the Sentencing Council, an independent statutory body that issues guidance to judges, proposed that pre-sentence reports should usually be required for certain cohorts of offenders, those from ethnic, cultural or religious minorities, as well as women, young adults and pregnant women. This sounds innocuous. After all, disparities in sentencing certainly exist, and these reports are intended to give context. But what followed was a ferocious political backlash, with critics led by the Shadow Justice Secretary Robert Jenrick and the former Home Secretary Suella Braverman, accusing the Council of attempting to enshrine a form of identity-based leniency into judicial procedure. Jenrick called it a form of two-tier justice, where, in his words, straight white men would be more likely to be imprisoned than others convicted of identical crimes. Braverman, meanwhile, declared on GB News that the system would be racist, sexist and unfair, going so far as to demand the abolition of the Sentencing Council itself. So let's pause for a moment. Until recently, few outside the Inns of Court could name a member of the Sentencing Council, but when you produce a guideline that is interpreted as softening justice for certain groups based on their identity, their colour, their race, their religion, their background, you guarantee yourself front-page ignominy. And so after weeks of firm defiance, the Council blinked. And on the very day the guidance was due to come into force, this Tuesday, the Council suspended it. It did so after the Justice Secretary Shabana Mahmood herself, the UK's first Muslim woman to hold the office of Lord Chancellor, threatened emergency legislation to make the guidance unlawful. And in that showdown, Parliament won, at least on paper. So where does that leave us? Technically, the guidelines are not dead. They're simply suspended. They could be sort of eased in, squeezed in when Parliament isn't sitting during the Easter vacation, during the summer recess. The draft legislation known as the Sentencing Guidelines Pre-Sentence Reports Bill was tabled, ostensibly to block the guidance, but it's yet to pass. And here's the crucial point. Parliament is heading into recess. That we need to keep repeating, because this stuff can simply be squeezed through. Now, I think there's room for some sentence guidance in precisely this area, but the sentence guidance that's come out is abhorrent. The House of Lords rises on April the 3rd. The Commons follows on April the 8th. After that, we have local elections in May, and then the summer recess looms. It would be a perfect time, some might say, opportunistic time, to smuggle this back onto the books, perhaps in a slightly modified form. They can say, oh, yes, well, we listened, and now here it is. You see, Mahmood has publicly rejected the guidance, and there are those within the Labour Party and indeed the legal establishment who still support the underlying principle that contextual factors such as racial disparity and gender-based trauma should play a role in sentencing. And if not this guidance, then something like it may quietly emerge later this year. And the question then becomes, was this a principled stand by the government or a political manoeuvre to win headlines while biding time for calmer waters? It's worth at this point looking at the optics. This was a Labour government threatening legislation against an independent judicial body, one that ironically was working from drafts introduced under the Conservative administration. And that fact alone complicates the narrative. But politically, Labour could not be seen to endorse anything resembling differential treatment by race or gender, especially not in marginal constituencies, hence the hardline posture from Mahmood. This wasn't an easy victory. The Sentencing Council, chaired by Lord Justice Davis and ultimately overseen by Baroness Carr, the Lady Chief Justice, still insists that the guidance was necessary and appropriate. There's no indication that they accept its permanent withdrawal. This is a little bit like a standoff with Ofsted. And while Number 10 has refused to rule out scrapping the council altogether, it's far more likely that we'll see a redefinition of its remit, a slow erosion of its independence, and a chilling effect on any future guidance perceived as progressive in tone. So what are the implications? First, This episode reveals a deepening rift between the judiciary and the political class, especially over the idea of judicial activism. And when ministers start threatening emergency legislation to override guidance, we edge towards a politicised justice system. Second, it's exposed a broader cultural battle within both major parties. Should courts seek identical treatment or equitable outcomes? Is the goal formal neutrality, or is it contextual fairness? The answer differs dramatically depending on one's ideology. Third, it teaches us something cynical but important, that timing is everything. The government is unlikely to rush this legislation through before the Easter recess, and even less likely to reopen the row before local elections, which raises the very real possibility that some version of this guidance will return quietly in the dog days of summer, when journalists are on holiday, when the public is watching Wimbledon. This two-tier sentencing guideline has been delayed, not definitively defeated. It may yet return, like bile. And the government, ever the seasoned illusionist, may choose to reintroduce it when the audience is distracted and the curtain half drawn. So keep watching in the shadows of the legislative calendar, because that's where the real performances take place.